IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We're sitting here on Tuesday, August 19th, and Notre Dame has named its starting quarterback. And I think it's important to start the show with Trevor saying, like, look, I got this one wrong. I thought that Notre Dame was going to go in a different direction. My intel said that. I got it wrong. I made a prediction. I got it wrong. Notre Dame is going to start CJ Carr as the starting quarterback. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to break down the decision. We're going to talk about what a CJ Carr offense is going to look like. And then part two of the show is going to get into the conversation of what we know and what we don't know about this Notre Dame football team, Trev. And this news that broke as I'm like literally getting into the shower, I get a call from Trevor and he's like, dude, they just announced starting quarterback. So we had to change our show completely around. We're going to obviously break this one down and talk about it. But Notre Dame, Trevor, has named its starting quarterback for, I shouldn't say the 2025 season, I think for the Miami game. They've named their starter for the Miami game, and it is going to be CJ Carr. Despite all the indications that we were getting from sources that it was going to be Kenny Minchie, it sounds like in the end, CJ Carr made that late charge and was able to win the job.
It was funny because I texted you, I don't know what, you called me around 11 to game plan for the show today, and we were talking, and I was like, look, man, I feel like every football team in America has named their starting quarterback between Monday and today, and I'm getting ESPN notifications around, who the Browns have named their starter, and Steve Angeli was named the starter at Syracuse. The Colts named their starter, Ohio State's named their starter, and the list goes on. And I was talking to you, and I was like, look, I'm just to the point where I just want Notre Dame to announce somebody. Now, I want to know that Notre Dame has a QB1 heading into game one, opening up the season down in Hard Rock. And so now it's big relief off of the shoulders of, I'm sure, a lot of Notre Dame fans, ourselves included, to know that now it is, for all the concerns that we listed off yesterday, Notre Dame now has their starting quarterback. Either one was going to be inexperienced, so they want to get them as much reps with the first team as possible, because here's some more bright news. Notre Dame is now 12 days away from kicking off their 2025 season. And so now it's all hands on deck.
And we talked about this yesterday, Trevor. They needed to come out of the off day with the decision made. And that's what happened. I was talking with Sean Davis earlier today, and he's like, do you think they could maybe go into the weekend? And I was like, man, whoever the starter is, you've got to do it now. They need more than just 5 days of basically preparation on Miami. Notre Dame took yesterday off, or excuse me, they're taking today off, and then tomorrow starts Miami week. And so now you've got your starter. And now both players know their roles going into that game. The starter now gets his reps kind of ramped up, and you now take it over. And now it comes time to say, okay, the battle's over. The focus has been a lot of it being internal, right? I mean, you're talking about CJ Carr basically going out every day and saying, hey, look, I got to do the best that I can to perform in this competition. And what's in front of you is the competition. And then Kenny Minchie has to do the same thing. Look, I've got to go out there and perform to my best in order to win this competition. Well, now that the competition is over for the opener against Miami, now the focus becomes on the starter, who we now know to be CJ Carr, unless somebody on Notre Dame media is just about to get fired, which I don't think is happening. But, it's funny, as soon as that happened, that was my thought. I wonder if this is, somebody made a mistake. And, just the way this whole thing is gone, you're just you're waiting on the best. But now it's okay, you've got Wednesday, you've got Thursday, you've got Friday. I don't know what they're going to do this weekend as far as prep time. They won't take 2 whole days off. But I doubt that they're going to have 2 full practices either. So you have at least something this weekend, whether it's walkthroughs, a practice, whatever the case may be. And then you get out on Monday and you have your game week. And obviously the game doesn't play until Sunday, so it'll be a little bit of a different game week. And then you get into it. So obviously now the battle's over. And, Trev, let's just talk briefly about the battle, and then we'll kind of dive into what a CJ Carr offense is going to look like. And what CJ Carr needs to improve on, from what we've seen and some things we've heard, in order to play to the way that we all think he can play. But I think the battle was interesting. We've talked a lot about it. We put a lot on the board. I put a post up last night basically saying, hey, my intel's telling me it's going to be Kenny Minchie, and here's my issues with the process. And it wasn't so much about Kenny being the starter. It was the process didn't make sense to me. And lo and behold, the process came out with a different result. I don't know that I still love the process, just because I don't know enough about how this decision came to be. Was it Marcus Freeman sitting down, looking at all the data, taking maybe the Minchie push was maybe a gut feeling based on certain things. And then you look back and look at the data, and the data tells you something different. And you say, okay, let's go and make that decision. Is it Marcus Freeman trusting the people that he hired to make a decision that maybe was against what he thought? Maybe it was Marcus Freeman changing his mind because of the performance of the quarterbacks in the last few days. There's a lot of reasons of how this could have come to be, why the intel got it so wrong. And it wasn't just me. I mean, I think this was sort of the consensus across the board. But at the end of the day, the decision comes here. And CJ's the starting quarterback. And so what I'm not saying is, okay, the process was right because it came to the result that I thought it should have came to. I don't know how the process went. But what I can say is I do know for a fact that the decision was not made for the things that were my concern. My concern is, are you making a quote unquote safe pick? Are you concerned about, are you looking to maybe not be as aggressive throwing the football? You're not naming CJ Carr the starting quarterback for Miami if that's the case, because that's not what CJ did this fall camp. He was aggressive. He turned the ball over more than Kenny Minchie. Every source I had told me that. But you also heard about he made more big plays. He moved the team more consistently. Now the key is, and it's funny, I was talking to Sean about this, and he goes, you have to basically, if you pick Kenny, you have to basically go to Gino Guidugli and say, this is who we're going with. Now fix this. Like, we need to fix this. I love the aggressiveness, but maybe tamp down a little bit on it to where we're not turning the ball over. Well, now CJ Carr has a week and a half plus to make some of those adjustments and make some of those improvements. And now the team can rally around a guy. I think that's maybe the biggest thing now, Trevor, is parents are going to be a lot less, inundated with text messages from reporters. Players are going to be a lot less inundated with text messages from reporters. The offensive coaches at Notre Dame are going to be a lot less inundated with questions from reporters. And they can now say, okay, we've got our guy. Let's rally around him and let's go play ball. Because the one constant, the one thing that I was told that never changed and nobody ever disagreed with, there were some people that thought it might still be Carr. Most were Minchie. The one thing was the players had this we don't care mentality, meaning we love Kenny, we love CJ. We're going to rally around whoever is the starting quarterback. And now they know who it is, and you can move forward with that and start getting ready for Miami and put all this other stuff behind you. And I think that's important, not just for the quarterback position in the offense, but for the team in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, they kick off against Miami in 12 days down in Hard Rock. It's time to start gearing your focus towards that. And Marcus Freeman in previous off seasons has talked about how, limiting distractions and making sure that the team can stay focused. And this has been the biggest distraction, you could argue, of his career, short of him taking the job, because this is his first major quarterback battle. In pertains to the battle, one, hats off to Kenny Minchie for making it this close of a battle, because there were a lot of people at the beginning of this that did have the mindset of, as long as CJ just doesn't lose the job, he's going to be the starter. And Kenny is somebody who made this so close. And it puts my mind at ease knowing that Notre Dame is in a situation where they have two guys in there that can certified go in there and win them football games. And that's a really good spot to be in as a program. It's the spot that Notre Dame has been trying to recruit to. It's the spot that Notre Dame, this is the reason why they didn't feel the need to go to the transfer portal this upcoming season, because they knew that the future, near and down the road future, was in their current room. And through different processes, they found their guy. But hats off to Kenny Minchie for making it this close. And if, God forbid, he ever has to come in due to an unfortunate circumstance, I'm sure along with the rest of Notre Dame's fan base, is going to be extremely confident in his abilities to lead the offense. But when I start thinking about this competition as a whole, I'm with you. Obviously, I read the intel piece last night on the message board. And I started thinking about that one comment that Marcus Freeman made in his press conference, talk about, this is my choice, this is my decision. And I know that that can be interpreted a bunch of different ways, and we talked about it on the show the other day. But then a part of me started to think, what if this was just his way of deflecting any amount of blame on his coaches, on a Mike Denbrock, on a Gino Guidugli? Because we've seen this track record.
He's always done that.
Exactly.
He's always done that.
That has been his track record, to your point, Brian, that after every loss, it's, I have to do better. I have to get our coaches more ready. I have to. So I wonder if that maybe played a little bit of a factor, and not just, you brought this up in the show yesterday, and I know this wasn't what you were saying. You clarified that. But it's not like if 4 assistant coaches come up to him and say, hey, I think it should be quarterback A. And Marcus Freeman's like, I think it should be quarterback B. So we're going with quarterback B. I think it's more if something were to go wrong, he wants to make it known up front that, hey, this was ultimately my decision. And that's the good responsibility that we've seen him take through those tough losses and through, performances where the team didn't win a game or win a game like we thought that they should. Marcus Freeman has always said, I need to get this team better. I need to get my coaches more prepared throughout the week, and I need to get this team ready to go. So I think it was a little bit of that as well. But I'm not sure about – actually, I am sure about you, Brian. I'm sure about the rest of the people in the chat. I'm just happy that this discussion has now came to an end, and Notre Dame has a starting quarterback.
And you hope that it was handled in a way with the coaches that the players can say, okay, I got you. I'm talking about the players involved in the competition can say, all right, coach, I got my fair shot. I got it done, or I didn't get it done. And you hope that that would be the case either way. I think obviously there's been a lot of talk on our end in the media. We've talked about it on here on the message board about it. I don't think the players are as tuned into that stuff. Like somebody asked, do you think this is a distraction to the players? And I said, I don't think it's that way yet, because I don't think they're on they're not on the message board like, hey, did you guys see what Driscoll wrote? Hey, did you guys see what Tim O'Malley wrote, or what Tim Priester wrote, or what what Eric Hansen wrote? Like, I don't think they're doing that. Parents are doing that. I do know that, but the players aren't doing that. They're focused on, dude, I got practice. I got workouts at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm not on a message board. But if the process continued and dragged on, then it starts to become a bit of an issue. And so now they have it behind them, and they can move forward with what they're going to be. And you just hope that – I'll say this. One of my frustrating things is I had a buddy of mine last night and said that he called me. He goes, I think CJ choked. Talking about when the thought that he wasn't going to win the starting quarterback job. And I kind of went off on him a little bit. And not because I thought he was insulting CJ Carr. I thought he was insulting Kenny Minchey. Because you're telling me the only way that Kenny Minchey is going to start at Notre Dame is if CJ Carr chokes. It couldn't be that Kenny outplayed CJ, or Kenny gives them the best chance to win because of whatever reasons. And that's just where this competition has gone. It's not entirely unexpected. You always hope that it's not going to go that way, but it's not entirely unexpected. I said it all summer. I thought CJ Carr was going to win the starting quarterback job. So who I thought was going to win it, won it. But if Kenny won the job, then let's roll, as long as the process was correct. At the end of the day, you have two very talented quarterbacks that can win you a lot of football games. My argument was that CJ Carr was the guy that had the highest ceiling. And I was actually willing to live with a couple more mistakes early on if it meant he was going to be – and you and I said this all summer about whoever the quarterback was. And when somebody brought up to me like, well, what about kind of like 2018 situation where, Kenny starts until CJ's ready? And I'm like, well, how fair is that to Kenny Minchey? So you put him in there, he beats Miami and Texas A&M, and then you're going to bench him against, NC State and halfway through the season. And then when CJ Carr gets to the playoffs, his first game against a really elite team is going to be a playoff game, or flip the scenario and do the exact same with either player. That wasn't fair to either guy. Pick your guy and then roll with them. And we talked about this yesterday. Even if the quarterback doesn't play great the first two games, you had a process that goes all the way back to January. Trust that guy. Believe in that guy. Give him the time to learn and grow as a quarterback. And as long as they do that, I think they're going to be fine, because they have two very talented quarterbacks that you can win a lot of football games with. And at the end of the day, CJ Carr is the starter. And now we know. So Trev, I want to dive into what an offense with CJ Carr is going to look like. Obviously, the big thing that was going to be true no matter what was Notre Dame was going to throw the ball better than they did last year. Or let me change that. We knew that Notre Dame was going to throw the ball more than they did last year. I don't want to say better, because that's still a bit of an unknown. But the one thing that we do know is the reason that you went with these two players is because they both can throw the football. There's this notion that grew around Kenny Minchey. I think we both know why, that he was a dual threat quarterback. And the funny thing is CJ Carr ran for more yards in high school than Kenny Minchey did. I just want to point that out to people. Kenny is an athletic player who can run, but Kenny's best traits are still dropping back and throwing the football. CJ Carr's best traits are dropping back and throwing the football. And so these two players, whoever started throwing the ball, was going to be more a part of the offense than it was last season. And it needed to be. And we've talked about that. So with CJ as a starter, I think Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock both talked about this. He mentioned, they both mentioned, like, look, there's differences between these two players, but they're not significant. It's not necessarily like a Kenny Minchie playbook that has all these different plays and the CJ Carr playbook that has all these different plays. We broke it down yesterday. We need to rehash that too much. But now you're going to tailor it more to what Kenny or what CJ does than before, where you were just kind of doing your stuff and seeing who did what best. Now's the time where Mike Denbrock's going to sit down with Gino Guidugli and the staff and say, okay, this is our starter. Let's look at the data from camp. Let's look at the data from the spring. These are his 6 or 7 throws that he just nails. He reads it well. He throws it well. And when I say throws, I don't mean like a slot fade. I mean your slot fade concept or the corner route of smash. I mean smash. You know, because you may throw a corner route great, but if you don't read smash well, then when you read it correctly, it looks beautiful. When you don't, the corner's undercutting you and picking it off 4 times. So it's more so about let's tinker with it, let's tailor it. So let's talk first, Trev, about what a CJ Carr offense is going to look like, and I think it has to begin with the understanding that you are still going to be a team that first and foremost is going to go out on Sunday night against Miami. And on Saturday, September 13th against Texas A&M with one goal at the top of your list. You know what that is? Run the football effectively. Establish the running game. That's the first thing they're going to have to do. Now let's talk specifically about the pass game, Trev. I think with CJ Carr as your starter, you're not going to have as much of the QB runs to protect the run game. I think the first thing that I want to see is what the RPO game is going to look like with CJ Carr as a starting quarterback. We've seen a little taste of that in fall camp and in the spring. I think that's going to be the first part of it, is you're going to see more usage of the RPO part protecting the run game as opposed to Riley. I shouldn't even say run game, protecting the running back runs, where last year it was Riley Leonard protecting the running back runs with his ability to run. That dynamic is going to be a lot different this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And to build off of what you said surrounding RPO specifically, I'm going to be very curious to what this is going to start to look like down and distance scenarios. We kind of assumed last year that once you get inside of, 3rd and 3, 4th and 2, 3rd and goal from the 2. I mean, honestly, anytime that you're inside of the 5, most likely number 13 last year was running some sort of QB counter, QB power, some sort of read option. This year, I wonder how much more the passing game is going to be involved in those short down and distance scenarios, specifically around the RPO game. That is going to be something that's very intriguing. How are you going to be able to leverage the downfield passing attack to help cushion your run game? So it may not be as obvious. So the tendencies aren't as obvious. Now, the bright spot about last year is I don't think it was a mystery to anybody in the stadium or any of the millions of people watching at home who the ball was going to on 1st and goal from the 2-yard line. I don't really think it was a mystery. You had 2 options. One of them was 13, and one of them was wearing jersey number 4. But now it's
good
to the
luck
point
stopping
where
it.
Exactly, and that's what made them so dominant last year. Is you knew it was coming and you can't stop it.
And Ford was going to be a part of it either way. He was either going to carry the ball or block you. That was basically, you know what I mean?
He was going to block beforehand.
Yes.
But now it's to the point where the passing game can now be used as a viable option in the offense, not as a resort. And that was going to be true regardless of who was going to be the starting quarterback. I just think it's going to look a little bit different with CJ Carr. To your point, I do think the RPO game takes a step up because that was one of the things that Riley didn't read too well last year. There were moments where he did struggle in the RPO game. On the moment, and in some of the games where it was clicking, like against Stanford, it was clicking. I think he had a touchdown pass to Chris Mitchell on one, and he also had a touchdown pass, I think, to Jaden Thomas on an RPO play, both in the red zone. That is something that we might potentially see a little bit more of this upcoming year.
He had one against Stanford to Chris Mitchell, Stanford against to Jaden Thomas, and also the touchdown throw to Bo Collins against Georgia was also an RPO throw.
Yep.
It could have been just play action. I think it was RPO based on the way the line blocked, but
Agreed.
That's another example. Yeah.
Agreed. And
can you also clarify real quick, Trev, and explain just real quick what RPO means? Because I think when a lot of people hear RPO, they think quarterback run. Just real quick, I'm seeing in the chat. Just real quick, just explain the distinction. Like we're not talking read zone, we're talking RPOs.
Yeah, RPO, it's a little bit different. You have your receivers running some sort of most likely a short route concept. Maybe like a slant with a slide route underneath, or maybe some sort of hitch. But the offensive line up front is blocking a specific run play. And so it's up to the quarterback to then read the defense based on, how many people are in the box, how many people are out of the box. I don't want to make it sound as like more simple than what it is, but it is, you have the option to run or pass. Run being hand off the ball, and pass, either get it out quick, or if the read's not there, you just hand the ball off to whatever running back you're
there
riding up the read
can
on.
be a quarterback running element to it. But so when you see Notre Dame, like there's a second level read, sometimes it's a safety, a linebacker overhang. There is a play that Notre Dame runs that also is an RPO where they go in motion, or they'll like tight end will go in motion. They'll run the ball, he'll pull it, and then get outside, and the tight end will run like a little underscreen. That's a triple option version of it where the quarterback can run it, throw it to the tight end, or hand it off, obviously, at the beginning. So RPO a little bit different than read zone, and RPO does not need to be something you have Mac Jones ran a bunch of RPOs with Steve Sarkisian in 2020. Mac Jones was not running the ball. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. But anyway, let's continue, Trev. So obviously that's something you can do. So if teams are loading their box, bringing safeties down, they want to rob that guy down, you're hitting the glance route behind it. If they're going to leave easy access windows to the boundary because they're trying to bring crash guys off the backside edge, you pull it, throw that little hitch outside, or the little slant outside, or you throw a bubble screen. There's different things you can do, but it's meant to protect the run game. That's what I believe an RPO is. It's meant to put defense in binds where you just can't bring resources down to the box whenever you see this action. Do that, and I think that you always have options where you're not just stuck to, well, we're going to run the ball, they're bringing 9 down, so better luck next time. Have ways that you can attack the defense, which means they have to kind of hang back a little bit. If you're good at throwing the RPO game, they have to hang back a little bit, which now means less numbers in the box for your run game.
Yep, absolutely. I think another difference that we're going to see, in the offense this upcoming season is more of a willingness to push the ball down the field. And I know we have yet to see either of these quarterbacks take snaps in games, but what we saw from both in camp, especially CJ Carr, is the willingness to push the ball down the field. I don't really think that we would go and see that in a fall camp practice, and we see it in multiple videos that the Fighting Irish media puts out on their main Twitter page. If they're not going to then do that in games, I'd be pretty shocked if that were to happen. So I think that's another aspect of that looking different. Now, we saw it at times last year, but the key word there is at times. Keywords there are at times. And it wasn't a viable option. It was more of a resort. We saw it against Penn State. We saw it against Ohio State that, okay, when they get down into a situation where now they have to throw, that's when Riley would start pushing it down the field. Or consistent with what we saw in 23, when they played just a significantly inferior opponent, guys that weren't physically able to cover a Bo Collins or physically able to cover a Jaden Greathouse, we would see them take shots downfield. The first touchdown pass of the season for Riley Leonard was a 38-yard touchdown pass to Bo Collins against Miami of Ohio. And then we see other shot. Navy had a bust in coverage, hit Bo Collins over the top, hit Jaden Greathouse over the top against Navy. I think some of the changes you're going to see is you're not going to have to wait until Notre Dame plays Purdue this year or wait until they play Stanford this year. I think it's going to become more of a viable option and more of a running part of the offense than it is, okay, it's 10-3, it's the third quarter, I guess we should probably start pushing the ball down the field.
I think another part of the game is and this is kind of ties into the RPO game, is I do think you're going to see the quick game be utilized a little bit more this season. Some of that is RPO related. I think that's also going to be part of it. I think the reason for that is, and that would have been true with both quarterbacks, but I think especially with CJ Carr, is because what quick game does is, number one, is it allows you to just get some easy gains against off coverage. So, I talk about a free access throw. So what is a free access throw? So essentially I look to the boundary and I don't have, there's a will linebacker. There is a safety over the top. They've rolled down to the trip side. The corner's playing 7-8 yards off the ball. That's an open access throw. It's a free access throw. Now at the snap, that guy may come down and, you've got to read that correctly. And sometimes they'll get you, but that's a free access throw. Free access throw is you're running, you've got a bubble screen call with an RPO, or you just call a bubble screen because you feel like you've got numbers a certain way. You call now screens. Now screen is basically, we saw it last year where Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison would run it a bunch. They would basically just step back. You just throw it right now. Get it to right now. And then they run a screen. I think you're going to see a lot of that early in the season as a way, again, to get the young quarterback into a groove. Like, look, he doesn't have to read anything on this play. And, just get the ball out to your playmakers, let them go make plays. I think that'll be a part of what we see the offense do more of than we saw last season. We saw it last season, but it's more so about kind of just ramping it up, and especially early in the season, saying, hey, what are some ways that we can protect the run game by getting the ball outside, but also giving our quarterback, not putting our quarterback in full field reads every time he drops back to throw the football. And I think you're going to see the quick game be part of that as well. And when you have the kind of playmakers that Notre Dame has at receiver, I think that's going to be a part of it. And one of the things I've heard about Malachi Fields from different sources is that one of the things that surprised them about Malachi was how good he is with the ball in his hands. I think they were just kind of thinking he was going to be like a Miles Boykin type of guy. So even with him, you have the ability to throw up a quick hitch. If they tackle it, you get 4 or 5 yards, but he makes somebody miss. Next thing you know, he's 10, 12, 15 yards down the field. So I think those are ways early on that you can allow your quarterback to be more effective and to get into an early rhythm. Because I think establishing an early rhythm with the quarterback is going to be important, especially in the opener against Miami. How does Miami counter that? We'll find that out, and we'll get into that more as we get closer to that matchup. I think big picture, that's going to be another part of it. Here's something that has to be true, Trevor, and something I will think is true, is Notre Dame's percentage of throwing the ball down the field last year was very low. They did not attack down the field very often. They were not a real aggressive throwing team unless they kind of had to. It's kind of how the offense was last year. Last year in 16 games, Riley Leonard only completed 20 passes beyond 10 yards past, or 20 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he only completed 39 passes beyond 10 yards. The heavy amount of his passes were less than 10 yards down the field. So if you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, only 29.1% of his throws were more than 10 yards down the field. And only 10.6% of those throws were 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. So if you just look at past seasons, that's a significantly lower number. Just look at 2023 with Sam Hartman at quarterback for Notre Dame. That season, Notre Dame's 41% of their throws were 10 yards or further past the line of scrimmage. 41% with Sam Hartman, only 29.1% with Riley Leonard. It just was. It's not one guy's better. It's very different. It's a very different emphasis. Even in 2022 with Drew Pine at quarterback, 31.9% of their passes were 20 yards or more down, or 10 or more yards down the field. And even with Drew Pine at quarterback, 14.2% of their throws were beyond 20 yards, and Drew completed 52.8% of them, whereas last year, Riley Leonard only 10.6% of his throws were 20 yards or more and only completed 46.5. Part of that is personnel related. Part of that is this is, like Riley missing time. This is where the offense is. We're a really good running team. We've got guys that, Jaden Greathouse is great in a quick game. This guy's good here, intermediate. We're just not going to be a team that attacks down the field. So that part is going to ramp up. To what degree, we're going to find out. But there's certainly going to be more emphasis on throwing the ball down the field. Now, I would argue that number should have been higher last year based on play calling. That number should have been higher if the quarterback would have been more willing to take some throws that were there. We've talked a lot about that. But even then, Trev, it wasn't that much where it was, if he would have just thrown the guys that were there, it would have looked like Sam Hartman numbers. No, it wasn't. Mike Denbrock, like what great coaches do, built the offense around his quarterback. That's why Marcus Freeman brought him here. He doesn't need just one guy to win. He can win with any type of quarterback because he'll adjust what he does to the quarterback. Well, both Kenny and Minchie have big arms, or both Kenny and CJ have both Kenny and CJ have big arms. They're going to want to throw the ball downfield. That's also why you went out and got Malachi Fields. And it's why you went and got Will Pauling and why Jaden Greathouse is so important to your offense. And Eli Raridan is more of that type of guy, in my opinion, than what Mitchell Evans was. So I think that's going to be a big part of it too, is attacking down the field. That's going to be huge, is finding ways early on in the season to get CJ Carr some opportunities to stretch the field that don't necessarily require him to make big reads. CJ's going to force a couple. I'm pretty confident in that because we saw him do it in practice. He'll force a couple, but I'm willing to live with that because he'll hit some, but then he'll start hitting more and more and more as he starts getting more experience and seeing what defenses can do.
Well, let me ask you this then, Brian, because I'm actually just genuinely curious about this. What is a good percentage to be at of throws of 20 yards down the field or longer? Because we know what Riley Leonard's numbers were, but is it reasonable to expect what Sam Hartman did as a 6-year senior in 2023, or what would that number look like for a first-year starter, but a first-year starter that has very high upside and is very skilled pushing the ball down the field?
I think part of that depends on who you are offensively. I think that's a big part of who you are. Is are you a team that wants to throw the ball down the field? For example, I think 13 to 14 is reasonable. I go back and look at CJ Stroud, his first year as a starter. Ohio State's not a team that throws a ton of deep balls. They are strategic with their deep balls and they're effective with their deep balls. But in 2021, CJ Stroud's first year as a starting quarterback, he completed 21% of his throws, 14% of his throws were throws down the field. He was at 51.6%. I think that's a reasonable number. Sam Hartman's number in 2023 was a guy who was a 6th-year senior. So he was at 18.7%, and that's kind of just who Sam was. You also had that number bolstered by they would throw the ball down the field a lot against Central Michigan and Tennessee State and Pitt and teams like that. They weren't as aggressive throwing the ball down the field against Ohio State. They weren't as aggressive throwing the ball down the field against, Duke. And part of that was because he just didn't have time to get the ball down the field. But I think part of his number was a little bit inflated by the fact that, he was a bit of a gunslinger. But I think, you look at Drew Pines, 14%. Just forget what Sam Hartman did at 18%. Look at Drew Pines, 14% of his throws. I think 13 to 14 is certainly reasonable. How often you do it is also going to be partly dependent on how many you hit. If you're completing 40%, maybe you throw have to throw more because you're in more third and longs, second and longs. But if you're completing a higher rate, then that number is going to go down a little bit. So I think that's part of it too, Trev, is going to come down to can your offense protect the quarterback enough to do that? I think that's kind of a part of it. Look, if you look at, like, for example, if you look at Jaden Daniels' first year at LSU, he was at 10.8. He was at 30. His percentage was 32.6. That's a whole lot closer to what Riley Leonard was last year than what Sam Hartman was. Right? I mean, that's kind of where that one was. Certainly a percentage not closer to him than it was to even to Drew Pine. And then the next year you look at it, and his deep ball percentage was up to 16.6. I think if you look at the makeup of that team in 2022 at LSU, you kind of understand why. I think somewhere right in the middle of those two is where I think you'll find CJ Carr because of the makeup of the team. Because what was different about the 23 LSU offense compared to the 2022 LSU offense? Number one is in 2022, it was year one. Jaden Daniels was a new player on a new team, transfer quarterback from Arizona State, new system that was being learned by everybody at the same time. And so, of course, they're not going to be as aggressive throwing the ball downfield. Jaden Daniels was a little bit reserved. He wouldn't pull the trigger sometimes, which is why some people wanted Garrett Nussmeier, because he comes in the Georgia game and he's just chucking it deep, when he came in that Georgia game. So then what was the concern? Well, this is why we want Garrett Nussmeier. Well, the next year, with a year in the system, and, the offense, your players more, all of a sudden you start throwing the ball a lot more effectively down the field and a lot more consistently. The other thing, too, is Brian Thomas hadn't really emerged as that kind of vertical threat either in 2022. He had 31 catches for 361 yards as a true sophomore. He hadn't really kind of taken that jump. You had Malik Neighbors who could stretch the field, but your number two receiver in 2022 was Keyshawn Butte, who was more of a short to intermediate kind of guy. The next year, Brian Thomas has his breakout, and all of a sudden he jumps up to 17 yards a catch. Kyron Lacey jumps up to 18 yards a catch because Kyron Lacey is a guy that also was more of a down-the-field type of weapon. So the weapons were different too. You have more down-the-field weapons in 2025 compared to what you had in 2023, in my opinion, as well. And I think that's part of the conversation also. So I'd say 13 to 14% is about where I think you could be. But that's a let's say a 3% difference. But if you're talking about, throwing 350 passes, 3% is 10.5. That's 10.5 more throws that are going to be down the field. And that's if it's only like that's only if you look at 350 passes. Actually, Riley Leonard last year threw 445 passes. So let's just say CJ Carr repeats that number of attempts. That's over 13 more deep shots that you're taking. And then the other part that's got to improve, Trev, to me is the intermediate piece is where I want to especially see more change from Notre Dame. I think that's the part is that you're going to get your deep shots, but there was a lot of things last year that we did not see from the pass offense that I think we will see and need to see more from this year. The 10.6 deep shots is where we start with, but that to me is not the number that was more troubling for Notre Dame. Last year, only 18.5% of their shots were from 10 to 19. I pointed out CJ Stroud, his first year as a starter, he was at 27.3. That's a much bigger number. I mean, you're talking about just not a lot of balls at all going past 10 yards. I think that's an area where I definitely want to see a jump. CJ Stroud, only 14% were shots of 20 or more. That's where Drew Pine was. Here's the difference. Drew Pine in 2022, only 17.7% of his shots were from 10 to 19. That's a low number that's comparable to Riley Leonard, where CJ Stroud was 27.3 that year. So I think those are areas where it's not just the deep shots, but it's making sure that you're not deep or short. But you also have to attack that middle of the field. And if you look at a lot of Mike Denbrock's concepts, things he likes to do are within that 10 to 19 zone that we didn't see as much last year. Seam routes, a lot of times will get caught, especially if they're hit quick against cover 3, will get caught right before 20 yards. They hit a lot of backside digs at LSU in 2023, where you read play side. In order to take that away, you got to come to that backside dig. I can only name 3 times that I remember last year Riley Leonard coming to a backside dig route. I can only think of 2 or 3 times all year. He missed one. He hit one against, I think it was Miami, or maybe it was Stanford, actually. He hit Chris Mitchell on a backside dig route, and then he hit another one a little later in the year. It's just not something they did as much. And the corner routes, a lot of times, the out cuts will hit there. I think that's an area where you need to start finding a sweet spot, and that's the area where I think that we'll see more of, but that's also a danger area with your pass offense, because that's where maybe a quarterback doesn't see a guy coming over, a linebacker dropping, a safety coming down. So that's an area where I think early on, I think we'll see some more of the turnovers is in that zone as the quarterback gets more comfortable. But you've got to be able to probe and attack that 10 to 19 zone more, along with being able to throw the deep shots a little bit more effectively. So overall, if you have about let's say Riley, what did I say? He was at 31. What did I have that number at, Trev? 31.1. Was it 30.1 for Riley last year? So it was 29.1 is what the number was. I want to see that jump up to 35 to 37 at least overall. Like I'd like to get closer to that 40 number to me, 35 to 40 number for me, especially if you're running the ball effectively. Because what you can do then is you can take more play action shots where you've got quarterbacks, both Kenny and CJ have the kind of big arm to get the ball down the field. You can do more play action stuff where you can take some one-on-one shots to a Malachi Fields. And the thing that we heard, I mean, this isn't just theory. One of the intel pieces I got that we talked about yesterday was, I mean, Kenny hit a bomb for a touchdown to KK Smith on a busted play. We saw that on the highlight video. You saw CJ hit Malachi Fields with a downfield throw against Dallas Golden, but I was also told that he had a 40-yard bomb where Malachi Fields beat Leonard Moore. I was told that by 3 different sources. So, like, we saw it just in the scrimmage on Sunday, the more of a willingness to throw the ball down the field, but it can't just be bombs and quit game. You've got to be able to attack that middle of the field piece, and that's where Malachi Fields comes into play. That's where Jaden Greathouse is going to come into play. That's where Eli Raritan is going to come into play. I think being able to hit those guys. And then there's some easy access throws that you can do down the field as well, the stop routes. So one thing that Mike Denbrock does is he runs a lot of verticals. And the way that Mike Denbrock teaches his verticals is they're all built-in reads. So verticals, essentially, everybody's running a go route on the outside or a seam route on the inside. And the way that he teaches it is if I'm running a go route and I've got a cover 3 corner who's 7, 8 yards off the ball, and at the snap he takes off, I'm not going to try to catch him and eventually pass him at 60 yards down the field. You can do that with Will Fuller. That's kind of where the list ends of Notre Dame receivers are going to do that. So what Notre Dame will do is they will then push past 10 and then stop. And you see that they stop, and then you just kind of bang that little quick stop route. Almost always, I'd say over 90% of the time, when I break down the film, over 90% of the time, that stop route is off of a converted go route concept, the verticals concept. And if you're, you could call it stops, but then if they squat, then you convert and you run past them. Usually you teach it as a vert that converts. That's usually how you teach it. Go unless. And we see Notre Dame do that a lot. You'll also see them do that in the slot. So if they're running, a cover 2 concept, or maybe they're running a quarters concept, and the safeties kind of bail, and I mean like an old school quarters, like safeties sinking, you may stop that sucker in like 10 to 12 over the middle and bang it to your tight end. So they run a lot of that. He ran that a lot at Notre Dame last year. He ran that a lot at LSU. He ran it at Cincinnati. It's an easy concept to learn because you can call it over and over and over again, and it'll look different almost every time based on what the coverage is. So if it's cover 2, it's going to look different than if it's cover 3. It's going to look different than it's cover 4. It's going to look different against, combo coverages, because I'm making my route decision based off what I'm seeing. I don't care what's going on over here. I'm reacting to this guy. And then the quarterback's got to read it and get the ball out. So I love concepts like that, Trev, where you can just keep calling this play, and it's not always just a go route. It can be different things. And so we're going to see a lot more of that. But being able to hit those stops and seams and option routes over the middle that are converted off the goes is something that I think we'll see a decent amount of too for Notre Dame this season.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some improvements, especially around the intermediate passing game, that I'm excited about. One thing that I wanted to get into kind of before we end this segment is we're very aware of how high the ceilings were for each quarterback. I mean, FanDuel had CJ Carr 900 points above Jeremiah Love in the Heisman odds before he was even named the starting quarterback. I just went through and refreshed it, and they have not updated the odds since CJ has been officially named the starter. But these are 2 kids with extremely high ceilings, but that doesn't mean they're finished products yet by any means. Fact of the matter is that CJ Carr still has yet to take a meaningful snap at college football. So there are 12 days left until Notre Dame begins their season against Miami. What are some of the things that he individually will have to kind of work on over the next week and a half to make sure that he is ready to go? Because as exciting as this news is, neither quarterback were going to be finished products, obviously. So what are some of those things for you, Brian?
For CJ, it's going to come down to learning the balance between being aggressive and forcing a ball. Like a lot of people say, well, is one of the concerns with being aggressive meaning you throw reckless throws? And I'm like, those are 2 different things. Aggressive doesn't equal reckless. You're usually reckless when you're aggressive, but that's not even always the case. And sometimes you're just reckless with the ball. I've seen quarterbacks I'm running a hitch to the field, and I see the corner at the snap is 7 yards off the ball and tilted inside. That tells me he's probably bailing. So I just catch and I throw the hitch. He doesn't ever bail at the snap. He squats on it. He drives in the ball. He picks it off. That's a reckless throw. It wasn't aggressive. It was a reckless throw. A reckless throw means you're not reading it. You're just forcing it. Being aggressive doesn't mean that. Aggressive means, okay, you want an example of an aggressive throw? Riley Leonard's second touchdown pass to Jaden Greathausen against Ohio State. That was an aggressive throw because it was tight coverage, but it was one guy, put that ball out there and let him go get a chance to make a play. An aggressive throw is Riley Leonard's back shoulder to Malachi Fields, to Bo Collins against Texas A&M. He wasn't technically open. It was, dude, throw it up and give him a chance to go make a play. That's an aggressive throw. We didn't see enough of that from Riley Leonard last year. That's different than, okay, I'm running a post route and the corner's trailing. This safety is over top here. This safety is over top there because it's cover 2, but I'm going to force that post route in there. That's not aggressive. That's dumb. You don't throw that route against cover 2. You know what I mean? Like, it was a reckless throw because you didn't read it out. I can live with interceptions that come from being aggressive. I thought I could make that throw. Like the interception CJ Carr threw against to Ben Minnick in the spring game. That was an aggressive throw. that he'll learn from. You don't want to make that throw again because you got to read the leverage of the DB. That's not a reckless throw. A reckless throw is, you could argue, his first interception to Tay Johnson in the spring, where you had a safety over top here and then a safety coming underneath here. You can maybe argue that's a reckless throw because I think he just saw the pre-snap coverage, just threw it. You can maybe say that. His second throw, where he tried to throw it over Bronte or Tay Johnson, he just jumps up and makes a great play on it. I don't think that's a reckless throw. That's an aggressive throw because he thought, I can get over. He sees the guy, I can get over top of him. Now you need to know, you want to make that throw next time, you better get that sucker about 6 inches higher than what you got it. Or know that when 9's there, you don't throw it. If so-and-so is there, if somebody else is there, you throw that, but not when he's there. Hey, I'm going to throw this back shoulder throw against this guy, but when Leonard Moore's over there, I may not make that back shoulder throw because he plays it so well. Or I may lead him on this throw it high, but I can't do that against Leonard Moore. I got to throw it true back shoulder. Because there's two ways to throw a back shoulder. One is to go up and get it. The other is to literally make it to where the receiver has to turn around and you hit him on the back shoulder. Against Leonard Moore, that high ball is not going to work all that well because he's 6'2", he can jump, and he's really long. So you may need to actually use his aggressiveness against him. Those are things that you learn. That's an aggressive throw, but sometimes when you make that throw against Leonard Moore, he's going to pick it off. Okay, I can live with that. We took a shot, and they made a play on it. A reckless throw is what Drew Aller did against Notre Dame in the bowl game. He threw backside, rolling left, threw back. That's not a reckless throw. Riley Leonard did not make a reckless throw and denied Dennis Sutton, picked him off. He made a bad read, but it wasn't a reckless throw. You see what I'm saying? So, like, it's knowing the difference in those two things. If you're rolling left, don't flip your hips around and throw a backside dig unless the guy's wide open, like Drew Aller did. That's a reckless throw. An aggressive throw is, I thought I had a window like this to hit that in cut, and I didn't, and it got tipped and picked off. Okay, I like the throw, but if you're going to hit it, you got to hit it sooner. You can't wait that long to throw it. Those are examples of the difference between an aggressive throw and a reckless throw. I want CJ to be aggressive. If Kenny's in there, I want him to be aggressive. I want them to be able to push the boundaries, but they have to understand the difference between aggressive and reckless. And that's what a lot of people on have asked us about in mailbags, is understanding the difference is something that CJ is going to have to learn. And knowing when I can live with a turnover and when, no, man, like at this part of the field and this down and distance, just jump the ball off to Jeremiah and see if he can go do something with it. In this game situation, like that's really what a lot of this comes down to, Trevor, is I probably should have just said that at the beginning. It's just knowing the game situations also is going to be important, because like you're thinking in the 7-on-7 mentality that a lot of young quarterbacks have, or I'm out there trying to throw dimes all the time. And in a game, you say, hey, look, man, it's okay sometimes to just take the check down and or throw it away and live to fight another day because you have this great defense. And when to say, yeah, it's 3rd and 9, but based on the time of the game, based on the down and distance, and based on the route, I'm going to try to take this throw. I'm not going to try to squeeze a window that tight on 3rd and 9 between 3 guys, and we're at our own 35. That's not the kind of throw you want. But on 3rd and 5 at our own 35, 3rd and 9 at our own 35, I may take this deep shot to Malachi because I think he's going to get one-on-one, and that guy makes a great play on it or picks it off. I can live with that. There's just understanding what you can and can't live with as a coach within a system that's going to be more aggressive throwing the football down the field. That's really what it boils down for CJ. And then just understanding that, and for all young quarterbacks, knowing the difference between reading a defense and guessing a defense. A lot of young quarterbacks, I'd say the same thing about Kenny. You think you know what they're going to do. In high school, you could kind of line up, they're going to show you something, and more often than not, you kind of know what the coverage is going to be. In college, they're showing you this because they don't want you to know what the coverage is going to be. And that's going to be something that young quarterbacks, good defensive coordinators will try to bait young quarterbacks into mistakes. And you've got to know the difference. So make your pre-snap evaluation. Like I've always hated the term pre-snap read, because a read is something that creates a decision. And the only time I like to actually read pre-snap is if you are going to take an easy access, or hey, that guy's off the ball, there is no anybody in the slot, I'm taking the now screen or I'm taking the now throw. That's fine. But if you're dropping back, I don't want a pre-snap read. I want a pre-snap evaluation and a post-snap read. And that's the process that Gino Guidugli is working with both of his young quarterbacks, is knowing the difference between a pre-snap evaluation and a post-snap read. And that's actually more of the mistakes I'm worried about with the young quarterback, is that not so much I tried to fit that post route in. I can live with that. It's when you get baited, that guy baits you into throwing a hitch route to the field, and he wasn't bailing. He was just trying to get you to think he was bailing. That's going to be the key to that. And knowing, like, okay, he bailed, so he didn't bail, so I got to go here. So you make your pre-snap evaluation. He gets you. He got you. He got me. I thought I was going to go here. It's not there. So what do you do? And that's going to be the key. When they don't give you what you think they're going to give you, knowing where to go with the football. And that's something a lot of young quarterbacks have to learn.
And it's something that we're going to learn how he handles as the season begins to unfold. There's definitely some things that he can work on, continuing to work on in camp, like you highlighted, knowing when to, kind of turn that gunslinger mentality on, and then also kind of knowing when to, hey, you take the check down, take what the defense gives you. You have a lot of skilled talent around you, and they can definitely make something work after the play. So I agree. It's kind of learning how to be more of that game manager, have a little bit more of that to your game, not completely switch who you are. Don't get that confused, but be what makes you great, but also know when to live within the offense and, let your guys go to work for you. Well, listen, folks, it's going to do it for part one of today's show. Notre Dame has announced CJ Carr as their starting quarterback for at least the Miami game. And obviously things could be subject to change as the season goes along. But as of right now, Notre Dame has their QB1 12 days before they begin their 2025 season. Don't go anywhere, guys. We have a lot more content coming your way. There's 1,700 people watching this live right now. So be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and you have that notification bell hit so you know whenever we go live here on the Irish Breakdown channel. But the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.